Summer, so we have your images here, and as you can see, I have them in a collection. And throughout the semester, we're just going to work on this collection. We're going to edit it down to your final images. And I think you're in fine art portraiture, if I'm remembering right. So you might have images from that class that you would want to be including in your final portfolio. You can't turn those in for an assignment for class here and get credit for that, but you can turn them in with your assignment and just let me know that they were for a different class, and we can look at them in regards to this overall portfolio for this class. Because for the final portfolio for this class, you could use images that were shot 2 years ago and images that were shot for fine art portraiture if you are in that class, and images that were shot for 225. Like, you can incorporate a lot of different images, and that's fine with me, but you need to be shooting new images for each class. So if you have any other images you want to add to this, let me know. As of right now, I think we're going to delete all of the images that you had from your 275 project. If I'm incorrect on that, let me know. But I think you're going to move, your idea is that you're going to move into a different direction now with these portraits. Now, to answer some of your questions, fine art versus are these images fine art? Okay, what are fine art images? That's the real question, right? So a commercial image, let's start there, is an image that you're photographing for a client. So this girl's mom's paying you to take her portrait. She's your client. You're photographing for someone else. That's kind of the definition of commercial photography, is that you're creating it for someone else. Maybe you're doing a still life for a food photographer or for a food manufacturer. Then you're working for the company that's making the food. You're their client, and they're paying you, right? So that's how we understand what commercial is. And then what's fine art? Fine art can be indoors or outdoors. It can be anywhere. Fine art is the idea that you're making the art for art's sake, for yourself, for feeding the desire in our hearts to create. That's what fine art is. It's not making it for a paying client. That's a big variation there. So these can be indoor, they can be outdoor. That doesn't matter. Those can all be fine art images. And I would say these both could line up into that idea of fine art. Now, these images feel pretty different. We'll talk about why they feel different. That might be problematic, but the idea of them being fine art, that's not a problem. The idea of them being indoors and outdoors, you can totally mesh all of that. I think I mentioned here, you don't want to have like two images that are outdoor and the rest of them all indoor. Then that's going to fall off a little bit. But in general, you can have indoor and outdoor, and they're all going to be fine art. They could all be in studio, and that will not be boring. I think that could be really interesting. So, yeah, hopefully that's clear. And if you have questions, if you want to know other photographers that are working in fine art portraiture that looks like this first image, I can talk to you more about that. But let's take a closer look here first. So what's interesting to me about this image is it's a reference to fine art painting, classic paintings. The monochromatic, or not monochromatic, but less color variation here, that lends itself to classic paintings. The lighting, the Rembrandt lighting, as Leslie pointed out, that is a reference to classic painting. So this has a real painterly quality to it that I find very intriguing. Referencing back to old styles of artwork can work really well to create a series. So I think this could be really a great direction to go. You also talked about, when you and I had our Zoom talk, like softening the skin, having larger eyes, having this almost like fantasy, as far as like a fantasy land, or idealistic way to view people. And I think we get that a little bit here with the softening of the skin and the lighting that you're using. The dark background, I think, is working great here. It really makes her stand out. The image is 2,284 pixels by 2,400. I don't really care what the pixels are. I want the longest side to always be 2,000 or more. But What I do want is I want you to consistently be shooting things in traditional frames. So you're shooting with a Canon here, that would be 3x2 or 2x3 for your dimensions that you're shooting. And if I open this in Photoshop, let's see. If we put this to 3000, you can see it would be 3 by 2.8. So that doesn't really line up as far as the dimensions go. We would want this to be 3000 by 2000. So I just want you to keep that in mind as you're sizing your images. We want that traditional framing because the traditional sizes, as we get to see 20 pictures in the final edit here for your portfolio, we don't want the dimensions to be changing with each image, right? We want that to look very cohesive. We don't want it to look like you didn't know what you were doing when you were framing your images in camera, so then you had to crop after the fact. We want some consistency there. So that's why I'm asking that you crop these all at 3x2 or 2x3 or 1x1. If you want to shoot square images, this image actually, do I still have it open in Photoshop? Actually might work just fine to have as a square image because you have all this extra negative space on the top. What were our pixels on the side? 2,284. So obviously a little bit different than that, but here it would work fine as a square image. So that would be another option for you, is to crop this square opposed to this kind of in-between size. The only concern I have about this image is that you're cropping into her elbow there at the bottom, and that feels a little bit abrupt, and there's a lot of negative space on the top. So I would want to kind of even that out, not have that extra space on the top when we could use it at the bottom. Okay. And then here, this is your other image, and this has less of that painterly feel to it. And that's the one concern I have. But that first image has more of like the monochromatic, and this has really vibrant edited colors, right? So that difference there, the vibrancy of this image compared to the lack of different colors in this image makes them feel very different. That's the difference in these two images. Not that one's commercial and one's fine art, not that one's shot indoor and one's shot outdoor. Just that this is, to me, referencing old paintings, and this is a very modern image. So either could work. You just are going to have to pick one or the other. And again, this has more of that dreamy feel, as the sun is obviously not that bright yellow color, and then you have like, it looks like pollen or something, or it looks like glitters coming down from the sky. So that has a element to it that's creating this kind of dreamland. The shallow depth of field is working well with that. As you're creating your portfolio overall, both of these subjects are centered. So I would make sure that you're varying where your subject is within the frame. It's only 2 images, so it could just be a fluke, but I want to point that out to you. But both of these images can work. But like I said, you're probably going to have to pick between the two. And you could shoot next week one image that's like the first image and one image that's like this image, and see which direction you want to go. You don't have to decide right now because, as I said, I think you're taking portraiture, so you have a little bit more space to build this out. All right, hopefully that answered some questions for you. And I actually think there's a photographer that I pointed out to Leslie that I'm going to point out to you as well in regards to referencing older paintings and how you can do that with a modern twist.